Why Soviet bus stops look weird. They stand alone, silent, forgotten. In fields, on highways, and in frozen towns across the former Soviet Union. Strange, alien shapes of concrete and tile, part sculptures, part shelters, part monuments to something half-remembered. These are Soviet bus stops, and they don't look like anything else on Earth. But why? Why did a regime known for uniformity, for control, for rigid concrete blocks, allow something so surreal, so free, so weird? You are standing on the edge of a Soviet road in the 1970s. You expect the landscape of conformity, grey apartment blocks, factories, endless utility. But instead, you find yourself beneath a bus stop shaped like a giant crown, or a concrete sail, or a structure tiled in mosaics of cosmic suns and mythical animals. It doesn't fit the story we're told about the Soviet Union, a state that wanted control over every brick, every blade of grass. So what happened here? What if bus stops became the one place where artists were allowed to dream? Bus stops were a necessity. Across the Soviet Union, millions relied on public transport to move between villages, cities, and vast stretches of wilderness. Roads stretched for thousands of kilometers, and in the harsh winters of Siberia or the burning summers of Central Asia, waiting for a bus required shelter. The government ordered them, local architects built them, and that's where the rules broke. Unlike apartment blocks or government offices, bus stops were considered insignificant, too small for Moscow to care, too minor to be standardized. And so, the architects, the dreamers, the local visionaries were given a rare gift in the Soviet system: freedom. They poured their creativity into these tiny structures, concrete shells shaped like waves, abstract sculptures that could have stood in museums, mosaics that celebrated folk tales, space travel, and the Soviet ideal. Each bus stop became a secret canvas, a fragment of imagination along the endless road, unquote. To understand how strange this is, you must recall what the Soviet-built environment looked like. From the 1950s to the 1980s, Soviet architecture was characterized by what was known as mikrorayons, massive housing blocks, grey and identical, designed to be efficient, uniform, and controlled. Streets were planned, playgrounds were standardized, even the colors of bricks were dictated. The state feared disorder, it feared individuality. Architecture was propaganda, order, discipline, strength. And yet, standing on the roadside, a bus stop might look like a giant concrete swan. It was as if, in a world of conformity, these tiny structures were allowed to whisper chaos. So how did this happen? The sequence unfolds like this. The order from Moscow. The central government demanded bus stops everywhere. They were practical. They kept citizens moving. The task fell to the province's local authorities, and architects were assigned to design and build them. But there were no strict blueprints, only a requirement: provide shelter. Architects find freedom. For once, the smallness of the project made it invisible to central planners. No one in Moscow cared if the roof curved like a seashell or stood straight like a box. Regional identity emerges. Architects began using local materials and cultural motifs. In Armenia, basalt stone arches. In Kyrgyzstan, sweeping organic forms are inspired by mountains. In Ukraine, bright mosaics are drawn from folklore. Across 15 Soviet republics, bus stops became experimental sculptures. A chaotic collection of dreams spread across an empire. The Soviet state wanted conformity. Instead, it accidentally created one of the largest, strangest, and most diverse collections of public art in the 20th century. Today, many of these bus stops still stand, but time has not been kind. Some are cracked, their mosaics shattered. Others are lost beneath weeds or demolished for new roads. Yet photographers and historians have begun to notice them, like relics of an alternate Soviet Union that almost existed, a world where creativity could bloom in concrete. They are not just bus stops, they are monuments to the contradictions of an empire. They remind us that even in systems built on control, the human impulse to create cannot be erased. Slow montage, faded bus stops dissolving into archival footage of grey Soviet blocks, then back to modern drone shots of lonely roads with surreal shapes still standing. The story of Soviet bus stops is not just about architecture. It is about freedom, found in the margins. It shows us that creativity doesn't always appear in grand palaces or monuments. Sometimes it survives in the smallest places. A roadside shelter, a forgotten mosaic, and it forces us to ask, what other histories lie hidden in plain sight? These strange shelters were born in a system that tried to erase individuality, and yet they are individuality made concrete. So the question remains, if such freedom could survive in something as small as a bus stop, what might have happened if it had been allowed to grow?